Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Oakland Raiders at the Cleveland Browns in their Week 3 matchup, which happened September 27, 2015. And what a crazy game this was. We're going to go over the scores, and we're also going to go over the stats and give our breakdown and analysis. We'll start off in the first quarter with about 8.5 minutes still left to play in the first. The first points got put on the scoreboard when Sebastian Janikowski hit a 23-yard field goal to make it 3-0 Raiders over the Browns. So that would be it for the first. Then in the second quarter, with a little less than 7 minutes left before halftime, Derek Carr hit Andre Holmes for a 3-yard touchdown. The extra point by Janikowski made it 10-0 Raiders over the Browns as they extended their lead to 10. But then with less than 2 minutes left before halftime, Travis Coons hit a 24-yard field goal that put the first points on the scoreboard for the Browns as they cut into the Raiders' lead to cut it to 7 with the score Oakland 10, Cleveland 3. But the Raiders weren't done scoring as they would respond with a 13-yard touchdown pass from Derek Carr to Seth Roberts. And with the extra point by Janikowski, it was 17-3 as the Raiders extended their lead to 14 points with less than a half a minute left before halftime. So it was 17-3 going into the intermission. And then in the third quarter, Janikowski would kick his second field goal of the game, this one a 35-yarder, with about 9.5 minutes still left in the third, that made it a 17-point lead for the Raiders with the score Oakland 20, Cleveland 3. So then with about 3.5 minutes still left in the third, Josh McCown would hit Gary Barnidge for a 28-yard touchdown, and the extra point by Coons would make it a 10-point game with the score Oakland 20, Cleveland 10 as the Browns got into the end zone for the first time in this game. So then in the fourth quarter, just 30 seconds into the fourth, Latavius Murray ran it into the end zone, a 6-yard touchdown run. Janikowski hit the extra point, and it was now a 17-point lead for the Raiders as they were up 27-10 with about 14.5 minutes still left to play. Travis Coons then would hit a 41-yard field goal with 11 minutes still left to play. They would make it 27-13 as they brought it back to a 14-point game with the Raiders still in the lead over the Browns. And then we ended up having a fumble by the Raiders. The Raiders ended up fumbling the ball, and after the fumble happened with Derek Carr hit Amari Cooper. Kirksey forced the fumble, and then Hughes recovered, and so now the Browns would get the ball and they would go 44 yards in 6 plays, capped off by a 4-yard touchdown pass from McCown to Travis Benjamin. So Travis Benjamin gets into the end zone for the 5th time this season, and Coons hits the extra point, and it was a 7-point game now with 6.5 minutes still left to play with the score Oakland 27, Cleveland 20. So now after the touchdown, the Raiders would get the ball, but they would end up going 3 and out, netting just 3 plays on the possession as they end up shooting themselves in the foot with a holding penalty on 2nd and 6. And they would end up punting the ball. But on the punt, though, Travis Benjamin muffed the catch as they ended up touching him, and it was recovered by Ball of the Raiders. Ball got the ball, and so now the Raiders would have the ball on the Cleveland 43 to start the possession, as they did not exactly change possessions, but it was a new drive now after the punt. But they would go 3 and out again. So they go 3 and out, they punt, but they get the ball back on the punt, and now they go 3 and out again, giving the ball back to the Browns. So now the Browns would get the ball, and they had a chance to win this. There was just under 3 minutes left on the clock, and the Browns would go down the field, starting on their own 2-yard line, basically in the shadow of their own end zone, but they marched down the field. They got out of the back of their end zone. They crossed midfield. They went 63 yards in 11 plays. They got all the way down to the Oakland 29, but then McCown was sacked for a 6-yard loss by Ball, which would set up 3rd and 14 on the Oakland 35. McCown then out of the shotgun, drop back, and Charles Woodson from Michigan, the former Wolverine and future Hall of Famer, gets the interception and gives the ball back to the Raiders, and all that was left to do was for Derek Carr to take the knee in the victory formation as the Raiders win this one on the road with the final score, Oakland 27, Cleveland 20, and the Raiders are now 2-1 on the season, and they are 1-0 on the road. The Browns now 1-2 with the loss. So the Raiders were in control for the most part in this game. The Browns did make it interesting there in the fourth quarter, putting up 10 points. Actually, 17 of their 20 points came in the second half, as it was like a tale of two halves in this game. But let's look at the numbers. Derek Carr, 20 for 32, 314 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Josh McCown, 28 of 49, 341 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. On the ground, Latavius Murray was the game's leading rusher. He had 26 carries for 139 yards and a touchdown for the Raiders, including a 54-yard run. And the leading runner for the Browns was Isaiah Crowell, just 10 carries for 36 yards. We look at the receiving. The leading receiver was Amari Cooper, the rookie from Bama, 8 receptions for 134 yards. Seth Roberts, 3 receptions for 56 yards and a touchdown. And the fullback, Marcel Reese, had 1 reception for 55 yards. He also had a carry for a yard as well. Crabtree, 4 receptions for 36 yards. And for the Browns, Gary Barnidge, 6 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown. Hartline, 5 receptions for 96 yards. Travis Benjamin, 4 receptions for 45 yards, including a touchdown. Benjamin did fumble the ball, however. We look at the kicking. Coons, 2 for 2 on the field goals, 2 for 2 on the extra points. Sebastian Janikowski, 2 for 2 on the field goals, 3 for 3 on the extra points. We look at the defense. Malcolm Smith, the former Seahawk, he was the game's leading tackler with 6 tackles. He had a sack as well. And, of course, Woodson with that interception. Khalil Mack had 3 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. Armstrong had a sack, and Ball had a sack, all for the Raiders. And over for the Browns, Kirksey had that forced fumble. And we look at the team stats. The Raiders had 19 first downs. The Browns had 21 first downs, although only 2 of those first downs came on the ground, 16 through the air for Cleveland. Then we look at third downs. And on third downs, the Raiders 6 for 14, converting 42%. For the Browns, they were 8 for 16, converting 50%. They also converted 1 of 1 on fourth down. Look at total net yards. The Raiders 469, the Browns 355. And yards on the ground that they netted, the Raiders 155, the Browns just 39. And through the air, the Raiders netted 314, the Browns netted 316, as McCown was sacked 5 times for a loss of 25 total yards. And Carr was not sacked at all in this game. So the Raiders defense coming up big, putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Of course, a lot of that was due to the fact that they just passed the ball. Of course, that was also due in part to the fact that they were playing catch-up, as they only scored 3 points in the first half. Believe the red zone, and in the red zone, the Raiders were 3 for 5, converting 60%. The Browns 1 for 3, converting just 33%. And on goal to go, the Raiders 2 for 3, converting 66%. 1 for 2 for the Browns, converting just 50%. The Raiders had the ball 32 minutes and 29 seconds. The Browns 27 minutes and 31 seconds. The Raiders were penalized more, almost twice as much. They had twice as many penalties, 12 versus just 6 for the Browns, but they were penalized 85 yards versus 50 yards for Cleveland. And the Raiders lost the only time they fumbled. They lost 1-for-1, whereas the Browns, they fumbled twice but only lost one. That was, of course, the one there by Benjamin that he fumbled. But yeah, the Raiders were in control of this game for the most part early on. Browns made it interesting in the second half. At that point, they just kept passing the ball. McCown threw the ball 49 times in the game. They only rushed the ball 14 times. That's not anything close to balance, and that's why they're 1-2. You look at the Raiders. Carr threw the ball 32 times. Murray ran it 26. And overall, they ran it 30 times. And that is balance. And balance brings you to 2-1. That's why the Raiders are 2-1. They have a balanced attack and a balanced game plan. They got good performances from Carr, from Murray, from Cooper. Just those, to name those top three right there. Not to mention getting good performances by Roberts and Reese as well. And, of course, the defense. And, of course, Janikowski, special teams. So the Raiders are doing it on all facets. And so, Cleveland made it interesting there. You can only wonder, what would have happened if Johnny Manziel had started. Of course, if Johnny Manziel had started, they probably wouldn't have thrown it 49 times. They might have ran the ball a little more. Of course, they weren't really having too much success on the ground, so that's part of why they didn't continue to run. They abandoned the run, and then they just went to the air, and that is a recipe for disaster. But the Raiders, like I said, they kept the balance in their offense. Their defense was pretty dominant in the first half. They did start letting up some points as the game, was coming to an end. But they ended up finishing strong, especially with that interception and also that special team play there on that punt when Benjamin muffed the catch. So the Raiders come up clutch in this game. Like I said, they were in control for the most part early on. Cleveland made it interesting at the end. But the Raiders, they had this one pretty well in hand. But they almost let it slip out away from them. But they pulled it off and get an important road victory. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.